Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo, two talented, successful, highly respected black actors, were subjected to the indignity of being called an N-word, hard R, live on stage while presenting at the BAFTA Awards.
The first BAFTA of the night for a vital part of movie making.
Of course they were offended, shocked, and probably taken aback. They stayed composed, professional, and continued presenting, even though they shouldn't have had to. They shouldn't have been put in that position in the first place.
That clip of Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo getting called the hard R by a man with Tourette's as they're presenting an award is mind-boggling to me. The entire internet just saw these two black men who were just trying to do their job and present an award get called a slur in front of an entire audience.
But to make matters worse, BAFTA and BBC chose to air that racist and embarrassing moment, even though they had hours to edit it out, just like they did other things they didn't want aired.
If the vocal tick that had taken place at the BAFTAs had been Free Palestine, would that have been edited out? Because we know that it was edited out, Free Palestine, when Akinola Davis Jr. said it during his speech. But then for some reason, the N-word being hurled at Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo, that was left in.
But with all of that happening, you would at least expect a real, genuine apology from the host of the awards, BAFTA itself, BBC, somebody. Instead, we got sorry if you're offended apologies.
Tourette syndrome is a disability and the tics you've heard tonight are involuntary, which means the person who has Tourette syndrome has no control over their language. We apologise if you were offended.
And a repeated call for grace, empathy, and understanding for John Davidson, who is an activist for Tourette syndrome awareness. They didn't extend the same empathy and understanding of how hurtful and offensive that incident was for Michael B. Jordan, Delroy Lindo, or the black community as a whole.
The worst part about this is that all of you are ignoring the feelings of the black people and saying, oh, you just have to accept it because this man has Tourette's. I said in my last video, you can't control the tics. You can't control having a disorder, but he should definitely apologize.
But I'm Jude, welcome to the channel. Please like and share the video. Don't forget to sub. Now, let's get into it.
Delroy and I are delighted to be presenting the first BAFTA of the night for a vital part of movie making. We're here to celebrate.
That was clear as day, no hiding it, no ducking it. It can't be overstated how devastating that moment was for Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo, who were the first presenters of the night. Look at their faces. They deserve applause for being able to keep their composure and keep the presentation going. This is two great black actors, probably at the height of their careers, riding off the success of Sinners, which is really an achievement for black people in cinema, being called a hard R and have to stand there and take it in front of their peers. There's no embarrassment or humiliation equivalent that a white person could feel in that moment. Not to mention black people in the audience, the black community as a whole, having to be subjected to that and watch them go through that moment. The way Michael B. Jordan froze after that. Right. In a moment like that from BAFTA, you would be expecting an immediate acknowledgement and apology for how uncomfortable two black film stars were made because of a slur. Doesn't matter who said it. But instead, what we got from the host of the ceremony, Alan Cummings, was an I'm sorry if you're offended apology.
You may have heard some strong and offensive language tonight. If you've seen the film I Swear, you will know that film is about the experience of a person with Tourette syndrome. Tourette syndrome is a disability and the tics you've heard tonight are involuntary, which means the person who has Tourette syndrome has no control over their language. We apologise if you were offended.
Apologize if you were offended ain't enough. We are offended. The black community is offended. The black men who were standing up there presenting with dignity are offended, were embarrassed and humiliated by that incident. I'm sorry if you're offended apology is not enough. It should have been to the gentleman up there. I extend my fullest, genuine apology for BAFTA and the incident that happened. Something. Not I'm sorry if you're offended when two black famous actors, damn near icons, are called the N-word, hard R, live in front of the full audience, their peers, and was aired. And Alan Cummings' handling of that situation was a sign of things to come. Because from that moment on, BAFTA and everybody else not black basically took the side of John Davidson, who has Tourette, and a more severe version of it with the tic that forces him to say offensive things called coprolalia, which causes involuntary, uncontrollable outbursts of obscene, taboo, or socially inappropriate words or phrases most commonly associated with Tourette syndrome. And apparently it's really rare, like only 10% of people that even have Tourette's have coprolalia. And while you can understand that that's a disability, it does not excuse the racism or the words that came out of his mouth or the impact it caused people.
This BAFTA situation with John Davidson and Tourette's has been very eye-opening. My comment section on my last video was a slew of white people telling me me that I need to educate myself on Tourette's. It's not that big of a deal. You guys don't know what you're talking about. And I say to you, you are some of the most delusional people known to man. When Black people are explaining to you our very valid feelings of racism, disrespect, and stripping us away from our dignity and humaneness, you should listen. One person who has a condition, who lives with a condition that is Tourette's, that is very real, doesn't get to gain his dignity at the cost of two other Black men. Hannah Beekler, who was a set production designer on Sinners, let us know that he used that word more than once. He said it 3 different times to 4 different Black people. The worst part about this is that all of you are ignoring the feelings of the Black people and saying, oh, you just have to accept it because this man has Tourette's. I said in my last video, you can't control the tics. You can't control having a disorder, but he should definitely apologize. And we're not asking for him to apologize because of his disability that he lives with, because he can't control that. He needs to apologize for the harm that his actions caused on national TV.
But instead of these men ever just getting a genuine apology from BAFTA, from John Davidson, from anybody, they were told, and we were all told, that we can't be offended. We need to understand the situation. We need to show empathy and grace without that ever being extended to those men and how they felt standing on stage being called the N-word. To the point that Delroy Lindo said nobody from BAFTA even came to speak with him afterwards. Then it was kind of announced that sometime after that, John Davidson actually left the award. But it doesn't change anything, especially after we learned that BAFTA and BBC had time to edit out that whole incident, the N-word being aired with these men on stage, and they chose not to. BAFTA and the BBC failed Michael B. Jordan, Delroy Lindo, the Tourette community, and viewers when they allowed the N-word to be aired during the BAFTA Film Awards ceremony. With the tape delay, this moment could have been handled differently. The audio could have been muted in the broadcast, or just the word beeped out, something, anything. The segment could have been edited. Instead, the slur went out. There was absolutely no reason for BBC to not edit that out when they had been editing out other stuff all night before it aired. With the 2-hour delay, the BBC could have removed the N-word slur from its BAFTA coverage and chose not to. Meanwhile, it cut director Akinola Davies Jr. saying free Palestine, a clear editorial decision driven by fear of pro-Israel lobby groups. Shame on them.
So those watching at home, archive your loved ones, archive your stories, yesterday, today, and forever. For Nigeria, for London, the Congo, Sudan, free Palestine.
So removing free Palestine to them is more urgent and important than removing the N-word being yelled at 2 Black men on stage.
If the vocal tick that had taken place at the BAFTAs had been Free Palestine, would that have been edited out? Because we know that it was edited out, Free Palestine, when Akinola Davis Jr., my G, said it during his speech. That was edited out by the BBC because the ceremony took place and wasn't aired until 2 hours later. But then for some reason, the N-word being hurled at Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo, that was left in. A disability is a disability. My thing is, there was a lack of safeguarding from the organisers, from the BBC who were broadcasting it, and from BAFTA as a whole. There is an issue here, and the way that I would say white institutions decide and prioritise what is harm and what isn't. Whether it was intentional or not for the word to be said, it doesn't change the impact that it has on those who it was said to, directed at, and those who had to hear it. Racism, one of the mechanics of it is humiliation. I can't speak for the 2 men who experienced that, but I would argue that it's humiliating. And then essentially people are doing all of this mental gymnastics to be like, well, nothing we can do. These things just happen. They're involuntary. Whilst I understand that, that does not diminish the impact of who, those who are experiencing it. And this is just a microcosm of what Black people generally face in society anyway. And I would like for the American Black History Month that we're currently in, some of you need to stop explaining to Black people how they get to feel about things that are only directed towards them in that moment.
There absolutely is no explanation for it. If they had time to edit out Free Palestine, they had time to edit out N-word hard R, and they chose not to because they do not care. And they didn't care how that event and incident affected the Black men on stage or the Black community as a whole. Because even in their statements afterwards, they were asking for grace and understanding for John Davidson, and not the black men that experienced racism, were humiliated on stage and had to carry on.
The thing you should know about this moment is that the BAFTAs were not streamed live, so they saw this happen in real time. Then when they edited together their broadcast, they decided to leave this in, not remove that moment or bleep it out or edit it. They chose to just show you this as it happened, and you should ask yourself, why is that? How they actually put together the broadcast is laid out in this article right here, because they were very concerned about political speech and the potential for people saying things they didn't like. As stated here, the BAFTA Film Awards are not broadcast live, meaning the BBC must edit a 3-hour show into a 2-hour broadcast window. The details are laid out here. Now, one of the things that was cut was the end of the speech from Akinola Davies Jr. Let me clearly say, fuck the BAFTAs. They did not care about John Davidson, did not care about Delroy Lindo, did not care about Michael B. Jordan. See them leaving this in as an insidious choice towards all parties involved. The question we all have to ask ourselves about all of this is why.
I think that's a really good point. BAFTA, BBC, put all communities involved in a horrible spot. The discourse online, the justifications, the goalpost movement isn't even surprising anymore. We saw people jump online and defend Donald Trump, posting the Obamas as apes. We literally saw them defend that and say it wasn't racist and it was taken out of context, and them trying to gaslight the black community as if we don't have a right to be offended. Why are people offended on behalf of people who were in the room, who knew him, who were told he had uncontrollable tics and could yell out uncomfortable things? He just made all of those things up. Most people in the room did not know John Davidson, and the presenters weren't actually warned about John Davidson or the outbursts, the tics that could happen until a few minutes before the event even began. So even if they didn't want to be subjected to that or were worried about what could come out on stage, it was too late for them to back out. Not like Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo were thinking, going on stage and presenting an award, there's a chance that I'm going to be called an N-word with a hard R while I'm talking. Who would think that? Michael B. Jordan is not a child. Black people are not children. There are black people with Tourette's. What is this deranged discourse? People being mad at the N-word being yelled while two black men are presenting and then aired by the network later, unedited out. That's black people, rightfully so, being offended by what happened for those men on stage and for the black community as a whole. And you're not gonna gaslight anybody into not having feelings or an opinion. The BBC should have edited the tick so that it would not be broadcast. But no one in that room needs an apology from John. The fact that somebody could say that is insane. Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo definitely deserved a direct, genuine apology from BAFTA, from BBC, and from John Davidson.
That clip of Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo getting called the hard R by a man with Tourette's as they're presenting an award is mind-boggling to me. Mind-boggling, number one, because they were able to keep their composure so well. I don't think most people would have been able to do that in that situation. And number two, because of the conversation people are having right now. Because before people even had a chance to digest what happened, I've seen people run to this guy's defense saying, oh, that's just how the condition is. They can control what they say. You know, they're not trying to offend anyone. And that could be true. And what's also true is that the entire internet just saw these two black men who were just trying to do their job and present an award get called a slur in front of an entire audience. I find it very funny that in all of the statements surrounding this situation, all of the understanding that people are seeking from, they're all saying, oh, we're so glad that the audience has understanding. We're so glad that the audience was able to, you know, deal with this. And not the two people that were actually called slurs.
And Jemele Hill actually experienced her own gaslighting when she spoke on this situation, asking for more grace from the person who shouted a racist slur instead of Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo, who had to push through being embarrassed in front of their peers. But that's often the expectation, that black people are just supposed to be okay with being disrespected and dehumanized so other people don't feel bad. We always have to be the ones in control, acting dignified, even when black people are the ones being attacked or called offensive things. And look at this fucking response to that. People should learn from Hank Aaron and Jackie Robinson. They were called all kinds of names, but they didn't complain about it, just smiled, went to work, and went home. It is insane to say we should just shut up, not be offended, not speak on a racist incident that happened to black men, and go on about our day, go to work, and be happy. Jemele responded, they didn't have a choice, and you probably should read up on what Jackie Robinson had to say after he was done playing MLB. And I'm sure you would prefer if black people didn't hold anyone accountable for how they've been treated. The gaslighting, the fucking gaslighting.
Now here's where this gets complicated. Tourette's syndrome is a neurological condition. A small percentage of people with Tourette's experience something called coprolalia, which is involuntary vocalization of socially inappropriate words. Involuntary means not chosen, not intentional. But here's what people, especially Black and Brown communities, are asking. If the word is involuntary, why is that word in the vocabulary at all? Tourette's does not invent language. It removes the brain's filter. It does not create new words out of thin air. Research shows that coprolalia tends to latch onto words that are culturally taboo or emotionally charged. The more forbidden a word is in society, the more likely it is to become a tic in severe cases. That does not erase the impact, because that word is not just profanity. It carries generations of violence and humiliation. So two things can be true at the same time. Tourette's is real, coprolalia is real, and hearing that slur directed at two Black men on a global stage is very harmful.
With this being a situation that's caused a lot of discourse, a lot of racism online, a lot of ableism online, of course, people with the disability from the Tourette syndrome community are speaking out about the situation.
I have been seeing a bunch of outrage about it, people saying, oh, well, why would that even be in his vocabulary? He did that on purpose and all of this stuff, and that racism is to excuse. A very sad day for the Tourette syndrome community, especially for the ones that have coprolalia, because when you come online and you see thousands of people hating on your condition, specifically coprolalia, because that's something that is already very embarrassing for all of us. Not going to say that people can't be offended by the fact that somebody said the N-word as a tic. However, it's not something that somebody can control. It's not something that somebody wants to say. And I've been seeing a lot of people be like, well, he said it like when the crowd went silent. That is most likely when a tic is going to happen when you're in public, when you're in complete silence, or when you're trying not to say or do something. Is it a disappointing thing? Shut up! That it happened in public in front of that entire crowd, specifically to Michael B. Jordan and the other presenter. I'm so sorry, I do not know his name. I wish I did, but no disrespect to him. I just am not too aware. Yes, it is a very unfortunate situation. Seeing so many people say that they would invoke violence against people with coprolalia if they can't control their tics. That's ableism. It's a fucked up thing that this happens, yes, but it's something that we can't control. Michael B. Jordan and the other presenter have the right to be upset, especially if they were not aware. However, we need to understand and educate ourselves. And on my videos, I constantly see people saying, oh my god, so funny, if I had cursing tics, I would be laughing all the time. But when people actually have cursing tics, then it's offensive and they're a bad person and this and that, the third. We need to do better. We need to educate ourselves better. This is not me saying that people don't have the right to be offended. However, you can't be offended when a disabled person is disabled.
You can definitely respect her using her experience with Tourette's and speaking on the situation. But a lot of people took this video, especially toward the end, where she said we need understanding and we need to do better, as her defending and justifying the racist statement that was made. The Black girl with Tourette's didn't even attempt to Google Delroy's name before coming to defense for a white man. I know exactly what she is. She definitely could have Googled his name. And other racists online then took this video and used it as a justification for them telling Black people that we're not allowed to be offended by this situation. She posted this afterward because people are using her video to invalidate Black people's feelings about this. Currently, I can't make a video as I am sick and in pain, but this needs to be addressed. People have begun to use my video on Twitter as a way to be racist, and this is absolutely unacceptable. I am not anti-Black, nor do I or would I ever excuse racism, even though she kinda did. I explained Tourette's and coprolalia in deep detail, which offended some people, but unfortunately at this point, people will be offended either way. I'm seeing people think that I meant that presenters Michael B. Jordan, Delroy Lindo, and even the director Ryan Coogler don't deserve apologies. They absolutely do, and I've stated this multiple times. I think the apology should be private and not public. Why? That's a really weird specification to an apology. If an offense happens in public, an apology should be in public, because a private apology doesn't address or erase the embarrassment that those two Black men faced on that stage. The whole situation was purposely publicized by BAFTA, and that's obvious by now. They clipped out Free Palestine, but not the tick. They 100% knew it would lead to discourse, and that's what's wrong. My intent was not to say that Black people cannot be offended, because as stated in my videos, the community is more than valid. One of my biggest problems I have in this situation is the BBC could have edited it out and it didn't. There's absolutely no excuse for that. If they could edit out the guy saying Free Palestine, then they could have edited out the racist BS too. They could have, but they didn't care, or they wanted more attention attention on their words, and they were willing to use racism against black people to do just that. If your condition made you blurt out anti-Semitic slurs at national televised awards events, Keir Starmer, I think that's the UK Prime Minister, would be outside Downing Street issuing a public apology tomorrow morning. But when it's racism against black people, suddenly there's nuance. We must take pity, or we have to understand, or we're overreacting. Again, just like the whole Trump video of him posting the Obamas as apes. Suddenly there was a whole bunch of nuance and context that matter when it really doesn't matter when it's racism. And then more of the weird gaslighting. So a man invited to the BAFTAs as inspiration for a film, demonstrating the horrific hostility and lack of understanding people with Tourette's face, is now facing horrific hostility and a lack of understanding over his Tourette's. Have I got that right? They just want to excuse racism so bad. Two things can be true. He could have Tourette's and he could have said something really offensive to a whole community of people that they want acknowledged and apologized for. You cannot gaslight me into thinking we're wrong for being offended.
BAFTA finally issues an apology unreservedly. So it's much more than if you were offended. They acknowledge the harm this caused. They talk about what happened, and they apologize to all.
BAFTA apologizes unreservedly to Michael B. Jordan, Delroy Lindo after Tourette's outburst. We want to acknowledge the harm this caused. The British Academy thanks Tourette's campaigner John Davidson for his dignity and consideration of others after choosing to leave the film awards halfway through. They should have 100% gotten this apology when it happened. Early in the ceremony, a loud tick of a profoundly offensive term was heard by many in the room. Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo were on stage at the time, and we apologize unreservedly to them and to all those impacted. We would like to thank Michael and Delroy for their incredible dignity and professionalism. We take full responsibility for putting our guests in a very difficult situation, and we apologize to all. We will learn from this and keep inclusion at the core of all we do, maintaining our belief in film and storytelling as a critical conduit for compassion and empathy. I don't see them acknowledging anywhere that they messed up or made a mistake by not editing out the slur in the first place.
John Davidson also then released a statement. I wanted to thank BAFTA and everyone involved in the awards last night for their support and understanding and inviting me to attend the broadcast. I appreciated the announcement to the auditorium in advance of the recording, warning everyone that my tics are involuntary and are not a reflection of my personal beliefs. I was heartened by the round of applause that followed this announcement and felt welcomed and understood in an environment that would normally be impossible for me. In addition to the announcement by Alan Cumming, the BBC, and BAFTA, I can only add that I am and always have been deeply mortified if anyone considers my involuntary tics to be intentional or to carry any meaning. I was in attendance to celebrate the film of my life, I Swear, which more than any film or TV documentary explains the origins, condition traits, and manifestations of Tourette syndrome. I have spent my life trying to support and empower the Tourette's community and to teach empathy, kindness, and understanding from others, and I will continue to do so. I chose to leave the auditorium early into the ceremony as I was aware of the distress my tics were causing.
That was a full statement? All of that is well and good. Everything he said is understandable. But where's the apology for the two black men that were called the N-word by your tic? If he didn't mean to do it, if it was 100% out of his control, unintentional, you can still apologize for offending people, even if you didn't mean to. People apologize for offending people all the time when they don't mean to.
I was diagnosed with epilepsy. It's a neurological disorder that makes me have convulsions, and I have grand mal seizures, meaning the big ones. Like I have to be hospitalized afterwards. I'm driving my car and I have an episode. I have a grand mal seizure. And in the course of me having said seizure, I hit another car, I hit another person. I do damage to something or something. Didn't intend to have the seizure, didn't intend to damage anything or anyone, but yet and still the damage occurred. The harm occurred. And no one is asking me to apologize for having epilepsy. That's weird to ask someone to apologize for an ailment they can't control. But there would be the expectation that I could acknowledge the impact that I had on someone. See how that works? So what I don't understand is no one is asking this man to apologize for having Tourette's. But why is it wild to have the expectation for him to apologize for the impact these two men experienced?
But no direct apology to the two black men that had to deal with that were embarrassed on stage in front of their peers because of that tic? That's kind of crazy to me.
Clearly, this is a very hot topic. It's very complicated, and some commenters were saying that we should all have more empathy for John, imagine what he's feeling, which I completely agree with. Also imagine what Michael B. Jordan, Delroy Lindo, Hannah Beachler, and many, many others were also feeling. Empathy goes both ways. And although Tourette's takes away the bad intent of the words, it doesn't just magically erase the harm of hearing that word out loud.
All facts. It's just so many things with this situation. It was shocking enough and bad enough that N-word with a hard R was yelled at Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo while they were on stage. And they deserved a real, genuine apology from whoever represented BAFTA right after they left the stage that they did not get. And then to add insult to injury to them, that moment was actually aired without being edited out when they edited other things out that they deemed offensive to people, just speaks volumes for how they really see the black community. Because either they didn't find it that offensive or they didn't care if the black community was offended.
The BAFTAs intentionally left this moment on air. Once again, when black people are telling you the intentionality behind racism, the subtleties behind racism, and just how we experience racism, the BAFTAs intentionally left this in. They said, oh, okay, it doesn't matter, they're black. They can be called a racial slur. Let that had been something anti-Semitic, homophobic, anti-trans, like that's calling a spade, it would have been taken out.
But again, Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo definitely deserve very public apologies from all parties involved. And I do think John, in his statement, in his apology, should have actually apologized to Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo, even if he offended them by accident. But again, not surprised by the responses. I mean, we saw people defending Trump being racist. So if they'll defend Trump, they'll defend anybody or anything at this point. But shout out to my channel members. Thank you so much for supporting. And thanks for watching. Y'all let me know what you think about all this in the comments. Also, make sure you check out the next video. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram for behind the scenes and life stuff. And I'll catch you next time. Peace.